The mansion stood tall at the edge of the countryside, an architectural marvel of stone, glass, and wealth. Every corner gleamed with the kind of richness that came from generations of business empires, the kind of wealth that most people only read about in magazines. But inside those enormous walls, behind the polished chandeliers and marble floors, there was silence, an emptiness that money could not fill. The silence was broken only by the soft cries of an infant, a baby boy who had lost his mother too soon. His father, Ethan Sterling, a billionaire known for his brilliance in business and coldness in personal life, was a man both feared and admired. People spoke of his ruthless decisions, his icy demeanor, and the way he buried himself in work after tragedy struck. But no one knew that behind his stern eyes lived a man who had lost the woman he loved most, leaving him to raise his child alone. And Ethan, for all his business genius, was utterly lost when it came to being a father. The baby, named Daniel, was only 6 months old. His eyes were innocent pools of light, his cries soft but aching for comfort. Ethan had hired the best doctors, the best nurses, and even the most expensive caregivers to ensure his son was looked after. But no one stayed long. They came for the paycheck, for the prestige of working in the Sterling mansion, but not one of them had the heart to truly care. Until her. Her name was Clara Hayes. She wasn't from wealth, not from privilege, and certainly not someone Ethan would have ever crossed paths with under normal circumstances. She was 24, working multiple jobs to support her younger brother after their parents passed away. When she saw the advertisement for a nanny position at the Sterling estate, she almost didn't apply. People like me don't get jobs like that, she told herself. But fate has a way of stepping in when least expected. To her surprise, she got the job. Not because she had fancy qualifications, but because during the interview, when little Daniel began to cry, she instinctively scooped him into her arms and soothed him with such tenderness that the child quieted instantly. Ethan, who had been watching with his usual stern gaze, said only one sentence that sealed her place: "Start tomorrow." From that day, Clara's life changed. The mansion intimidated her at first, the tall ceilings, the polished floors, the servants who looked down on her plain dresses and second-hand shoes. But Daniel didn't care about any of that. To him, she was warmth. She was love. She was safety. She sang to him softly at night, cradled him when he couldn't sleep, and laughed with him when he babbled in his crib. Day after day, she became more than just a caretaker, she became the only source of affection the baby knew. Ethan noticed, though he never admitted it. He saw the way Daniel smiled brighter around Clara, the way the boy reached for her as if she were his own mother. Ethan would often return late from business meetings, his briefcase in hand, his tie loosened, and from the doorway he would pause, silently watching. There, on the rug of the lavish living room, Clara would be lying beside the baby, whispering lullabies, telling him little stories, or sometimes simply sleeping with him close to her chest. Ethan never spoke in those moments. He only stood still, something tugging at his heart that he didn't understand, or perhaps didn't want to. One evening, after a particularly long day of negotiations in the city, Ethan came home exhausted. The mansion was quiet as usual, but when he stepped into the living room, what he saw made him freeze. Clara was lying on the carpeted floor, a pillow beneath her head, her arms wrapped protectively around Daniel, who was swaddled in a soft blue blanket. Both were fast asleep, their breathing synchronized, the baby's tiny hand resting against her chest as if he trusted her with his entire world. A baby bottle sat forgotten on the floor nearby. The sight pierced through Ethan's armor. She looked nothing like the polished women who attended his galas or the ambitious socialites who tried to get close to him. She was simple, humble, dressed in her plain nanny uniform. But the way she held his child, with pure, motherly love, was something no money could ever buy. For the first time in years, Ethan felt his heart stir. He had sworn never to love again, not after losing his wife. But in that moment, watching Clara sleep with his child on the floor, something shifted inside him. It wasn't just gratitude. It wasn't just admiration. It was something deeper. Something dangerous. The days turned into weeks, and Ethan found himself noticing more about Clara. How she would hum softly while cooking Daniel's meals. How she would kneel on the floor just to make the baby giggle. How she never once complained about being tired, even though she often skipped her own meals to make sure the baby was cared for. She treated Daniel as if he were her own flesh and blood, not just a job. And slowly, though he tried to fight it, Ethan found himself drawn to her presence. But Clara's life outside the mansion wasn't easy. She had a younger brother, Jamie, who was 16 and rebellious. Their small apartment in the city was barely livable, and Clara used most of her nanny salary to pay for his school and groceries. Many nights, after putting Daniel to bed, she would sit quietly in her small servant quarters, reading letters from Jamie about his struggles. She wished she could do more. She wished she could give him the life he deserved. But she never told Ethan about her problems. She didn't want to seem ungrateful. One rainy night, Clara stayed later than usual in the nursery, rocking Daniel, who was restless and feverish. Ethan, returning early for once, found her there. Her hair was messy, her uniform wrinkled, but her face glowed with care as she whispered to the child. "Shoo, it's okay. I'm here. You're safe." Ethan stepped inside quietly, his heart aching at the sight. "You treat him like he's yours," he said softly. Clara jumped, surprised to see him. I'm sorry, sir." "I didn't mean, no," Ethan interrupted, his voice low but steady. "Don't apologize. That's exactly what he needs." Their eyes met for a brief moment. Clara's were filled with kindness and humility, while Ethan's held a storm he couldn't explain. It was the first real conversation they had beyond polite exchanges. And from that night, something unspoken hung between them. But not everyone in the mansion approved. The housekeeper, Mrs. Alden, a stern woman loyal to the Sterling family, began to notice Ethan's lingering glances toward Clara. She disapproved instantly. "She's just a servant," Mrs. Alden whispered to another maid. "Mr. Sterling must not forget his place, and hers." Rumors began to spread among the staff, cruel whispers about Clara's intentions. Some said she was only after the millionaire's money. Others mocked her simple clothes, her background. Clara overheard once, and though it broke her heart, she stayed silent. Her only focus was Daniel. Ethan, however, was not blind to the whispers. One evening, as he overheard two maids gossiping about Clara climbing her way into the Sterling fortune, his jaw tightened. But when he walked into the nursery and saw Clara on the floor again, Daniel fast asleep against her shoulder, her own head resting gently against his, he knew the truth. She wasn't there for money. She wasn't there for status. She was there because of love. A love so rare, so selfless, that it humbled him. And it was in that moment Ethan realized something terrifying: he was falling in love with her. The question was, what would he do about it?